Hey, welcome back to the Diesel Podcast. We had a great conversation before about Power Strokes, and we had mentioned on there that it would be, well, I had mentioned that it would be really cool to talk about IDIs, and you've been around diesels for a really long time, and I've gotten questions over the years to talk about them. I don't know a lot about them. It can be kind of tough to find information, so I thought it'd be great to have you back on and talk about IDIs.
I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, I'm kind of a library on those, so I'd love to talk about them.
I'm gonna probably make myself like this is all I know about IDIs. That there was a 6.9 non-turboed, then there was a 7.3 that came out.
Yep.
I think it didn't have a turbo to start, but there were some aftermarket kits that were out there. And then it
Yes,
became a factory turboed truck. Am I correct?
correct, correct. Yeah, 93, 94 was the factory turbo option, and in 94 you had three choices of engines for diesel and Ford. That was kind of surprising at the time that you had the naturally aspirated IDI, you had the turbo IDI, and then you had the Power Stroke, which was manual only. But that's all we'll talk about Power Stroke for this episode. But anyway, yeah, 94 was pretty amazing as far as the diesel industry goes with diesel
Gosh, and when I think about that,
options.
you had the second gen 12 valve come out, and then you had the Power Stroke stuff. So it would have been a really exciting time to be in the new truck market.
For sure, for sure.
I don't want to gloss over the 6.9s because I can't say I get a lot of questions about them, but I'm trying to get a complete picture of them. Tell me what you know about the 6.9 trucks, and then maybe we'll jump into a little bit of like what is out there with the aftermarket with them, and then we'll go into the 7.3s.
6.9 was Ford's first attempt at a diesel. So if you get an early enough one, you're going to find them with smaller radiators, um, kind of archaic transmission controls, which they all did until they went electronic with the E4OD. But the glow plug system on the 6.9 was pretty archaic. Guaranteed failure with those all the time, hard start problems. But as far as injection pump injectors and the overall base of the engine, everything was transferred into the 7.3 pretty much the same. Now, why did they go to the 7.3? Well, my knowledge is they had heating and cooling issues. There wasn't enough girth to the block of the heads to help prevent those heating and cooling issues, so they had to increase the displacement, increase the block size, and the heads for that matter, to help control and cool these motors off. IDI's combustion process, it all happens in the cylinder head. The flame starts there once the injector's squirted. Um, that's why it's indirect injection, because it starts in this pre-combustion chamber and then flows through this little bitty hole into the into where the piston is, basically the rest of the combustion chamber. So it's kind of a unique process. These heads take on a lot of heat, um, and there's a lot going on there.
Is that something that long term, especially with the age on them now, is an issue with the heads because of that injection style and the heat over 40 years, 35 years?
Time, I always say time and mileage, it affects everything. And right now the IDIs in my mind are affected by time. A lot of cylinder head cracking issues, a lot of heads. Actually, I just donated to the dump yesterday because they're cracked or they're under spec thickness wise, and can't be repaired. So uh, if you find a good set of heads, make sure your machine shop's reputable so they can overhaul them properly. Again, there's not a whole lot to them other than this pre-combustion chamber that has to be set up right. Cracks are known to form with the pre-combustion chamber that actually flow into the head. So if that's the case, you may need a new cylinder head. Uh, yeah, I hope I answered that question right. But there's a lot to talk about there.
How long were the 6.9s on the market?
I believe it was 83 to 87 was the 6.9. And then somewhere in 87, they changed over to the 7.3 and it went from there.
Hey, Diesel fans, wanted to let you guys know that our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 40% off MSRP code for you. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code TDP2540, You get your 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, opening mechanisms, handle designs, and their whole lineup is designed to meet any budget that you might have. So we really appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel podcast listeners. So if you're in the market, head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code TDP2540 and get 40% off MSRP. Okay. That seems like a really interesting time as well. Like, we talked a little bit about 94 being a cool year, but I think about the 80s. And when I think of automotive and 80s, I think of anemic power. I don't think the OEMs had figured out how to give people what they wanted in the framework of emissions. So you had these underpowered, kind of engines, and then diesel on the scene. And that seems so unique to me because everything before that, in a pickup truck, I think of gas engines, either small blocks, big blocks, things like that. Do you, like, through your experience in this industry, do you know what spurred that on? Where, Ford, I know there's the GM 6.2 and Cummins or Ram in the 80s was thinking about the first gen. What spurred on bringing these diesel engines to the 3/4 and 1 ton market?
All the manufacturers do their surveys as far as what the market's demanding. So I have to imagine even back then, people were asking, hey, where's a diesel option? Simply for the fact of, even back then, everybody was pulling loads that they probably shouldn't have been, and needing something. You think of farm trucks too, 6973, perfect farm truck. I'm sure there were a lot of farmers at the time that needed an option to haul hay with or whatever, where they were at. I'd like to know that answer to that question too, but I'm kind of thankful they came about with it because here we are today because of it. So,
it spurred a whole industry. I think especially with the 7.3s, I was mentioning a little bit before the podcast, like my only real knowledge or experience with IDIs was with the turbo kits on the ones that were naturally aspirated, and then talk over the years or websites, companies, that I've heard about. But I think that really kind of, in my mind, kicked off, I don't want to say the performance side, but just taking a good platform, getting more power, more torque for the capability of towing, hauling, things like that.
Right. Yeah, Banks back in the day got a hold of these things. He did have a turbo kit for them. Definitely improved drivability of them. There was Hypermax, there was ATS, and probably a couple I'm forgetting right now. But yeah, they definitely opened up the market as far as what could be possible with the IDI application. And keep in mind too, this was long before head studs and girdles and all that stuff that we have now to reinforce these motors with. So
with the 7.3, you'd mentioned that the truck's evolving because of some inherent weaknesses that were there. What changed with the 7.3 besides just the displacement increase?
Well, as far as the turbocharger model goes, they did some cooling changes to the block, so there was more water flow around the cylinders. Overall, the heads, in my mind, kept the same design. Again, being we're filling the combustion chamber with more air because of the turbo. Keep in mind, factory spec for boost back then was 3 to 5 psi, so it's not like we're killing it. But just that little number improved the way these things ran. Injection pump size increased internally, so we were flowing more cc of fuel. Injector size increased over the years, so those were flowing more fuel. But you can take 6.9 parts and 7.3 parts and mix certain things together, and it's all going to fit. So if that tells you anything, a lot of similarities. So,
what kind of problems over the years would you see with like a bone stock IDI, like a 7.3 IDI? Were there any common problems that would pop up over the years?
Over the years, that's an easy one. There were glow plug issues across the board, 6.9, 7.3, injection pump issues. This is when we were trained to look for air in the fuel system, whereas now that's kind of a thing of the past. But a lot of air and fuel issues, especially 6.9, where they had a water separator that was located on the firewall by the brake booster. Those things would leak air into the system nonstop. So again, drivability issues related to it, hard starts. Run rough, smoke, too much smoke, white smoke, all related to injection pump failures. It was kind of simple back then. If you had this, and this, well, you need a new pump. Um, Overall, problems too. I mean, they did leak oil. This was kind of a norm on these things, but you could fix it with a new valve cover gasket or putting a rear main in or an oil pan, just like the current ones. So, and then back to the cooling problems, there were always one here and there where broken thermostats, whatever, caused cooling issues, plugged radiators. This too is in my mind kind of before the technology with coolant got better, which was probably half the problem with the cooling problems back then too. So
With that 3 to 5 psi, like I'm sure there were people back then that were like, well, maybe I get it to 6 to 10 or 10 to 12. People
oh
messing with
yeah.
them. How well did the engines handle boost and then maybe increase boost with modifications?
I'm going to say you're good up to 10. I know there's some guys that are running 15 to 16, and I've read on some of the Facebook groups that guys want 30 psi, which I don't recommend. Um, it takes fueling. It takes a properly built injector. Um, and when I say fueling, adjustments on the injection pump. Uh, these things will smoke. It's just the nature of the beast, especially if you do modifications to it. Overall, you don't see these clean up like a Power Stroke will. Uh, but again, yeah, you're doable 6 to 10. Anything over that, you're on your own in my mind. So because they weren't built to hold that kind of boost.
I imagine that the carnage that can happen if you take them a bit farther can probably be pretty extensive with the block or rods or.
Well, and keep in mind, you're adding more fuel, you're adding more heat, and that just goes to tear up these cylinder heads even more because they can't cool it properly quickly enough, and it leads to trouble. So, yeah.
One of the common, thinking back to some questions I've gotten over the years, I'm trying to reference, I don't remember exactly what people would ask me, but in general, I think they would take or be around other diesel trucks. Like I'm not talking something new or race truck, but maybe an OBS Power Stroke or a second gen or maybe a VP44 truck or something like that. And they have this IDI and they want to get it, they want more power, a little bit more torque. They know it's not going to be a race truck. They don't want to go down that road. But from my limited experience trying to find parts to do this, I guess even it could be replacement parts like heads and other things. What kind of aftermarket has existed or does exist to be able to do things like an injection pump, injectors, turbo? What if you do need to find a set of heads or other components because they've been off the market for such a long time?
The last 6.9 I dealt with, I had to go through probably 10 sets of heads to get 2 good ones. So as far as the 6.9 market goes, that kind of tells you where I'm at with it. That being said, the cylinder heads I donated here recently were 7.3 variety, and there were probably 6 to 8 of those that were no good either. Again, either because of uh, uh, thickness on the cylinder head was out of spec, or there was a crack that couldn't be repaired, what have you. You want to find the old guy. And I say that with respect because I'm getting there, but you want to find the old guy who knows what he's looking at and knows how to work on them. Blocks can be repaired. A good machine shop can take care of the cylinder heads, no problem. Again, overall, they're simple. They just got to worry about this pre-combustion chamber. As far as rods go, I know there's guys out there using Power Stroke rods in these now. I have not seen that or looked into it to see how that works, but I guess it is possible. So there's improvements there that can be made. And there's talking about the head stud technology back in the day that wasn't. There are now head studs for these trucks, lower end and top end for cylinder heads. So there is help there with reinforcing. Believe it or not, I don't see a whole lot of problem with the head gasket. It's usually a cylinder head and or a block issue if there comes to a failure of some kind. So, but yeah, the aftermarket, there are some companies out there that are dealing with fueling on these. A place called Classic Diesel Designs, I believe they're out of Texas. Just a shameless plug for them, but they are building injectors. They are building internals for the injection pumps, which is not a thing anymore. It's just you can't find new internals. even if I take a pump to our local rebuilder, he's going to mix and match the internals of this injection pump with 4 others to get it to work right, or even 5 for that matter. Who knows how many he's going to need, but to find basically a hub and a rotor that are going to fit properly together to operate the injection pump properly is almost next to impossible too. But this place, Classic Diesel Designs, evidently has the machine and are building or machining new parts for the internals on these pumps, which is exciting in itself. So I hear they're 4 weeks out usually, which I get, which just shows you the kind of demand that they're seeing for these pumps still. But yeah, a good set of evenly matched injectors that are going to flow a little bit more fuel, and that wakes these up for sure.
What kind of power level range did they have stock? And then what's a good range to get it to where you're not necessarily affecting the reliability of it, by picking up a little bit of power?
180 horse comes to memory on the horsepower number, so they're kind of low. Torque, I just because it's a diesel, I want to say there were 300 something in torque. I would say 200, 400 horsepower torque variants there that you're going to be in the reliable range still and be able to cool it and keep it healthy. That would be my 2 cents on that. Now, whether that's hitting the ground or not, all depends on your transmission and what you're using there. But, you know, yeah, that would be a safe number in my mind, 200, 400. I have heard over the years that there are some guys out there that had these trucks matched to a Power Stroke, power-wise. But again, the time they spent building the injectors to get just right fueling and the injection pump work was there was a lot of work involved. So
I think I think for this platform, what I've always heard is it's really they want it to last forever. I think they love Ford trucks. They love that engine, and they're just looking for longevity. And I think all diesel truck owners, that probably most of them, that's what they're looking for. But it so surprises me that this old platform like that still has companies making parts, still has people asking for upgrades, or are still bringing them to you guys at Strictly Diesel and saying, "Hey, I got some issue with my heads on my 7.3 IDI. What can you do?" That just it floors me because they haven't been out for so long.
right, right. Well, again, I tell people all the time, you want to find me or someone who's older because the younger generation doesn't necessarily understand them, and there's not a whole lot to understand. But yeah, guys like me who care about the trucks, who care about the body style, who like these trucks just as much as the customer, uh, they're still fun to work on overall. It's just challenging because of the parts, limited parts that we can get for these now.
Is it also true with the parts availability when it comes to things outside of the engine, like some of the body or accessories or components that go on it? Is it a tough market to find things for?
Vacuum pumps are hard to get nowadays. Alternators, there are some conversions out there you can do to put on a newer style alternator depending on the year you have. So that's doable. Power steering pumps, they're all over the place, so you can find those still. AC work, has it been converted to 134 yet? Is it still R12? That's doable also, but there are some challenges there. Fuel system, fuel pump. I know the last IDI I had, well, a couple IDIs ago, but it took me 5 lift pumps to get a good one. So just the quality on a simple gas lift pump with a diaphragm in it, they either leaked or they pumped air or just didn't put on any pressure. It took me 5 pumps to get a good one. And for what it's worth, there are companies out there, Classic Diesel Designs again, that are making electric lift pump kits for these things. So there's options there if you want to go around a certain part that's failing on you. So
What do you think of them from a longevity standpoint? Somebody who's maybe they don't want to spend a ton of money, they don't want to get something that's gonna, well, obviously new, that's gonna be 70 to 110,000 or plus dollars, and they don't really want to deal with maybe common rail, or maybe they just find one, or it's just something they get and they ask the question, well, how long can it go? Assuming things are in good to decent mechanical order, do they last a long time?
the joke back in the day, and it still holds true, is you won't get there in a hurry, but you'll get there, with the IDI. So, in my mind, yeah, they're still able to go forever. Um, Over maintaining them, like new coolant once a year, oil change every 5,000, um, fuel filters once a year. Over maintaining them is kind of the key in my mind to keep them happy. Uh, and you got to be able to know how to pop the hood and look things over. Honestly, it's just they will keep running. They don't stop overall. But for instance, the minute you get a bad tank of fuel and it puts water through the injection pump, well, you're probably going to have some issues at that point, because the tolerances in that thing are very, very tiny. So um, when cetane went out of the fuel, our fuel got drier. Cetane was a lubricant. Um, sulfur, excuse me, sulfur. Um, all of these IDIs now, and any of the older trucks, I recommend using the fuel additive every single tank just to help the lubricity. Um, because it's huge on these IDIs. You got to lubricate that pump or you're going to have issues.
That's a point that I've heard echoed a lot by different additive companies or people that I've talked to on the podcast, and we kind of, I think, naturally focus it in on the newer trucks because of CP4s and the demands of an emissions equipped engine and all that stuff. But my mind always goes back to the older ones. Like, what type of fuel was that engine designed around in the 80s and the 90s? And not even just Ford, but other trucks that are out there. It really screams to me like I need to use one with an older truck, especially.
Well, the minute the 49 states went to low sulfur diesel fuel, these IDIs were kind of outdated at that point just because they were meant to have sulfur. But again, I've seen great results from using fuel additive and being religious about it. So if you're doing that, you're still okay. But if you're not, the time's ticking for sure. It's going to come.
With like thinking of the transmission, like do you ever get any that have transmission issues, whether it's an auto or a manual? Do they tend to hold up pretty well, or is it just like every other diesel transmission? Don't maintain it, beat on it.
Right. Previous to the E4OD, it was a C6 or a manual, 4-speed manual that were behind them. Clutches fail like any other thing. The C6 was overall pretty decent behind this truck, although you only had 3 speeds. The E4OD came out, which gave us overdrive, which improved fuel economy and again, longevity of the truck. But the throttle position sensor is a known failure point because it sits on the injection pump in the heat in the middle of the engine bay. So there's a failure point with the E4OD. Throttle was so huge with that PCM at the time because, again, PCMs from now to then are a night and day difference too. But trying to think, there was something else. Oh, the Prindle or the sensor on the side of the trans. Those, for whatever reason, failed repetitively too. So you had your normal E4OD problems at the time, but there were other sensors on the motor and trans that could fail from time to time as well.
I think the big one is turbos. And like I think of trying to, like, say you got one of these trucks and it has a turbo on it. I imagine it might be kind of tough to get replacement parts or things like that if you need one. But then also, what about somebody who has one that didn't come with a turbo and they're looking to get a kit? Are there options out there for it?
To this day, Banks still has their kit available, decent kit overall. I don't think they put a lot of time into them anymore. So yeah, finding parts for those may be a challenge, but call Banks up and see what they say. There's another place, well, the place I've mentioned already, Classic Diesel Designs, is making turbo kits for these. There's a place called R&D IDI Performance. They're also making turbo kits. Don't have any experience with either one of them, but it sure looks cool when they get them done for sure. The pictures I've seen on their website, what have you. So if you're willing to wait, because I know all these guys are behind, definitely a quality product it looks like that's coming from them. So neat to see for sure still.
How involved is the install on something like that? Like, could you tackle it as a DIYer?
On an IDI, I'm going to say yes. As a DIYer, you can definitely tackle it. It's really straightforward, very overall simple. If you know nuts and bolts and can operate a ratchet, you're probably going to be okay. So, yeah.
Hey, diesel fans, I wanted to chat with you about diesel fuel. It's something we've talked about a lot on the podcast, and specifically ways that it can lead to a lot of costly repairs. And the main reason that we have these issues is a lack of lubricity. Our friends over at Hot Shot Secrets have developed a formula that boosts performance and then addresses this issue. So whether you have an old truck, new one, something, anywhere in between, we all face this issue. Hot Shots EDT is a 6-in-1 formula. It cleans injectors, boosts cetane, and it has 4 times the lubricity as our leading competitor. So it's a great way to be able to stay ahead of the maintenance curve, avoid those costly repairs, and the best part is it does the work for you. So all you do is add it to your regular fuel up schedule, and it's doing all the heavy lifting. So you don't have to worry about some of those issues that just come with diesel fuel anytime we buy it from the pump. If you go to hotshotsecret.com, use code DIESELPOD20. It'll get you 20% off your order. We really appreciate the team and our friends over at Hot Shot Secret offering this discount code just for you guys. So if you're in the market, head on over to their website, use code DIESELPOD20, and get 20% off your order. If I think of... So you get a turbo kit on one of these engines, and I think about the airflow. Like, how did they operate differently than, like, when I think of a turbocharged diesel engine, I think of a turbo, I think of a charge pipe, I think of an intercooler, I think of it going back into the intake side. How was it laid out on those older trucks?
It was really, really simple. You had your up pipe basically to the exhaust housing of the turbo. Obviously, your down pipe after that. The intake was straightforward. It was compressor housing right to the manifold. In an IDI, there are no restrictions in the manifold itself. It's wide open. So you're taking this hot compressed air and throwing it directly at the engine on the factory setup. Even a bank setup too is the same thing. Hot air right to the intake manifold. And I'm going to say again that the cylinder heads were the limiting factor on these motors, just because you can only cram so much air into that cylinder. And for that matter too, you think of a Power Stroke piston where it's got a cup in it for direct injection. IDI pistons were basically flat. There was a couple small indentations, but you pull a head off one of these and someone would think it'd be a gas engine piston, but it's not. So again, the limitations of the combustion chamber to hold the amount of air that you want are there also, but yeah, I would say the heads are the biggest limiting factor with these. So,
what would happen for somebody who wanted that 30 psi on one of these engines? Like, I think of the turbo that you would have, and then I think of the fueling you would need to do that, and then putting it into the intake, and then the heads, which you mentioned, and the pistons. Like, how could that even hold reliably, or would you have to really dig into that engine to do some upgrades?
I would hope it's built for sure, because I would hate to see a 30 psi on a stock head bolt, stock bottom end 7.3. That would be painful, I think. Yeah, this is someone who, hopefully you live in a county where they don't care what you're doing with your truck, and it's going to be smoky. It's going to be, I would think, laggy too by the time you get that turbo to spool up. I haven't seen one that pushes that amount, but reading online, you definitely hear that people are doing this and they're living supposedly, but yet who knows what you're getting told,
Yeah. I had a recent podcast. I was talking with an engine builder. We were talking about crank failures, and it was a really interesting discussion about harmonics. And one of the things that I learned from it the most was, with time, even on a stock truck or something really close to stock, the harmonic balancer.
Hear me? You broke up a little bit. You're breaking up.
Yeah, I can hear you. I think your video froze, though.
Are we back?
Yeah, I think we're back.
Okay, sorry. Good.
I'll trim that part out. The question I was going to ask you is about the harmonic balancer and the time, and if there's any sort of issues with the rotating assembly, because I'm not sure how often these guys are maybe changing harmonic balancers or even thinking about it.
I don't know of anyone who makes an aftermarket balancer per se. I do know that with harmonics, they changed the balancer on the turboed models. So that was different. However, I think you can bolt one of them up to any 7.3 and it'll work just fine. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but they were definitely looking at harmonics more and more the newer they got. And with that turbo and the added boost and obviously push out of that engine, the dampener did change slightly. Just like anything, flex plates got thicker. Crank overall, I, I think I've seen one bad crank on these motors, and that was pre-turbo days. So just a machining issue, at that point. It, if you were going to see a failure, you saw it early, and if you didn't see one up until 100,000, you probably would be all right with the lower end. So didn't really see a problem with the cranks on those. They were beefy.
All right, cool. So what I'll do is I'm thinking when we lost connection, I was kind of in the middle of that question. I'm just going to ask it again, and then once we're done with the rotating assembly, I'll ask you some more questions about it. But that way it'll be seamless when we edit it.
Sure, sure.
So I'll just pause for a second here. I was doing an episode recently with an engine builder. We were talking about cranks breaking on a completely different truck, but one of the things that really jumped out to me was it doesn't necessarily have to be about high power, high torque racing applications. It can be something that happens with time, the harmonic balancer not doing its job with decades on it or hundreds of thousands of miles. And I'm thinking of these trucks, they probably have a lot of mileage on them. They might. And somebody picks one up and they might have heard that last episode. Is that a failure that you've seen in your career, either with a lot of mileage or time on these engines, or is it something that's not kind of front and center of things I need to do if I get an IDI?
I would say it's not things you need to do now. If you're getting a motor rebuilt, obviously have the crank looked over thoroughly. I think I seen one broken crankshaft. That was back in the day at the dealer before turbos. Really not a thing. I think overall the crank was one thing that was a little bit overbuilt on that motor. Yeah, don't really see a problem with the cranks on those for sure. I mean, get it machined 10 over, whatever, put new bearings in it, down the road you go, So like anything, take caution, but I don't really see that as being a problem on those.
All right, so I'm going to think of a question for you. If I didn't have a diesel truck, I had a budget. I don't even know where the used vehicle market is now, so I was going to throw out a number, but it's probably not accurate anymore. But I'm not thinking of anything built in the 2000s to newer. I'm thinking of something in the 90s. Maybe this. I know the 7.3 OBS Power Stroke's really popular. The price has kind of jumped on those. Maybe that's a little outside my budget. And I'm looking at one of these trucks. In your professional opinion, working in this industry as a mechanic and the different facets that you have, would this be a good buy for a daily driver? Something to last, be reliable, hold up for someone?
I guess it depends on what you're going to do with the truck. If you're running errands into town or whatever on a daily, yeah, probably be okay for you. If you're looking to tow heavy with it, or I need to go from Phoenix to Flagstaff on the daily, not going to be one I'm going to recommend, just for the elevation change that we have between here and there. But and for that matter, if you're limited on a budget and this is the truck you find, you got to be willing to be able to work on it. You got to be willing to pop the hood, before a trip or what have you, at the gas station every time you fill up. You kind of got to know, even on these older ones, what's going on, just to be in tune with the truck and plan ahead for issues, basically.
I think that's a really tough question to answer whenever I get it. It's much more general, like which truck should I buy? And they're looking at older trucks.
Right.
And
Right.
I think of how easy it is. One, the power levels we've been accustomed to for a decade or even longer, 325, 350, 650 foot-pounds of torque.
Right.
Or you plug something in, wait 3 minutes, and there's an extra 200 foot-pounds and 150 horsepower. It's all right there. You can jump on a website, get a lift pump, get an air intake, get these other things. It's so easy to just get really good power and torque numbers out of it. And I think as an industry, we kind of look, or people can look at that and say, well, I'm going to go back to this 1993 IDI and I want 400 horsepower, 800 foot-pounds of torque because I want it to be close to this new one. And they do it with all the brands. But I think with this, that might be, it's like you have to be prepared and know the limitations of it. And then I think, like you mentioned, be really comfortable working on it yourself, doing the research, being willing to buy 3 injection pumps to give them to your pump builder so he can, make the pump work, or heads, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. If you're going to push that kind of power level, your machine shop better be spot on. You better meticulously put it together. And yeah, just be patient and know that you're going to have to be in tune with it to figure out what's next, you know, because it's not a matter if, it's when, unfortunately. Uh, that kind of power level with this motor is challenging for sure.
Or expensive, and expensive.
Or, yeah, or expensive. Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
What are some common things that people that have these trucks ask you guys when they drop by the shop? Are there any commonalities in either, I don't want to say repairs because I guess they kind of be all over the place, but what do customers ask you when they come in?
Usually it's a hard start problem or a smoke issue. They can't pass emissions. We got to do tailpipe emissions here in town. So there's that too. Um, Believe it or not, we do have some people come in and, hey, I want a chip for this thing. What do I got to do? There's no chip. Nothing you can do that route. And again, being we're in emissions county, we can't necessarily recommend pump upgrades or injectors or what have you, because that increases smoke and you're going to get flagged on it. So, or it won't pass emissions. You can't register it. So, but we're getting the usual oil leaks, maintenance on them, fuel filters, oil filters, fuel system problems. Again, you know, it's pretty basic overall as to what people come in for asking on them.
I think when I think of the IDI, I think of the time that they were built new and how people over the years they still have them want upgrades, ask for parts, and it kind of makes me think of the newer stuff and think how long are these 5.9 common rails going to be popular, or 6.0 power strokes? We talked about those last time on the podcast, or
Yeah.
the 7.3 power stroke, and just the lifespan of these engines and the enthusiasts who follow them is one of the most interesting and shocking things that I never expected. And you've seen this for a really, really, really long time. Do you ever anticipate a time where nobody walks into your shop with an IDI that needs stuff done to them, or do you always kind of expect there's always going to be one or a handful that are going to stop by?
Right now, I probably get one or two a year that stop by. I know we get more phone calls than that on them. It's hard to think about, and this makes me old, but a 1984 is now 41 years old. And it's kind of become like the 70s Fords, where it's kind of a classic truck market. If you have this truck, you know, you at least want to have it run so you can show it to your buddies or take it to the auction or whatever, you know. But yeah, they're kind of turning into a classic vehicle. It's hard to imagine a diesel as a classic vehicle, but it's happening. So
I don't think many people can appreciate that as much as you can because of your experience and your time in this industry. When you saw a lot of these trucks new, and for me, like they were way before I even knew like what a diesel truck was. I don't even remember seeing them. I didn't come across them until I was in my late 20s, and people would talk about them or something like that. I didn't know what someone who specializes in Ford, and you've been around that brand for a really long time. I didn't ask you this last time, and I thought about it after the podcast. What
right.
is your favorite year range of Ford diesel truck? And it doesn't have to be based on power or anything. It could just be aesthetics or just what you like. But what is your favorite?
That saying, I would kill somebody for X. I would kill somebody for an 86 F350. I don't know why, but the squareness of that body and just the overall look of it, it's mean, it's tough looking, it's so cool. If I could find one of them, I'd grab it for sure. So that body style always rings home to me, and I don't know if it's from my time on the farm or what, but it's yeah, that particular one seems to be my favorite. When I find them and look at them, I'm like, wow, this is cool. You know, as simple as they are too. It's just the simplicity, the niceties of it. They ride like a brick, but I don't care. You know, it's just a neat truck, and it kind of goes down the line from there. 94 to 97 power stroke would be my second favorite. I own several of them. And then 99 to 07 Super Duties. It's 1, 2, and 3 for sure.
When we look at those older ones like that 86, or you even look at the IDI, and loving these trucks, what do you think about swapping the engine? Because I know that's huge, is to throw a 12 valve in it or something like that. It just in your opinion, do you think those trucks need to stick with the engine that came in them to keep that kind of classic? I don't want to say nostalgia, but it's just like something's really cool about seeing an older truck with the engine it came with, in it still.
I'll be the first to admit I was hot and heavy for the Cummins conversions. I've done a couple. We did a couple here in the shop too, but I've grown tired of them, and that's no disrespect to the Cummins conversion crowd. All due respect, if you've got one with a Cummins in it, great. We'll fix it too. I don't care. But your nostalgia point that you bring up, I think, is key right now. It's something else to have a truck that has the right motor in it with the right trans, and maybe you've done some modifications to it, but in my mind, it's a sweeter vehicle at that point, and you don't have to overthink about, okay, what part do I need for this, because it's that, it's what it came with. I know what's going to happen. I know what it's going to need. With Cummins conversions, it's kind of a project, always a project. Not saying that these older trucks aren't projects either, because it does take time and patience to get them fixed. But man, finding an 86 with either 460 in it or a 7.3, it's just cool stuff, just neat.
To throw a wrench in it, one of the really cool swaps that I've seen is when someone, I think it was a 70s era Ford truck, and I've seen it so many times. There's a 12 valve or 5.9 common rail in it or something like that. And I think he did a 7.3 Power Stroke. And I
Yep.
just thought it was so cool to have a 7.3 Power Stroke. I think there's even been something with 6 liters and other things like that. But it's just so different. It kind of catches your attention. It's not necessarily the common swap that we've all heard about. And they make it work. They fit it in there, and it's cool.
I'm currently working on a conversion myself with a Power Stroke into a 80s Ford. So not an 86, but a later 80s Ford. There's a gentleman online, Cody Fordall, that is doing conversions with the 7.3 into the 70s pickups, which is absolutely cool. So that kind of sparked me to do what I'm doing here. So time is the thing. So trying to work on it as fast as I can, but it's very slow at this point. So
Well, it's combining so many, like one of the iconic body styles to me in the history of trucks was that like late 60s, mid 60s to 70s Ford truck body style.
yep.
I don't know if it's dent side or bump side. I know there's a difference in the sides of them, and the enthusiasts will tell me down below which one is which. But like when you have that classic body style truck, and then you have something as iconic as a 7.3 Power Stroke in it, which just they run forever. There's a lot for them. It's just I can't say it's my favorite swap right now, but it's one that's like quickly ascended the list of what I think is cool.
Yes, absolutely. Me too, for sure. It's neat. Finally, the Power Stroke is getting swapped into stuff, Finally. And again, no dig on the Cummins conversions. There's not a dig. I total full respect for them. But yeah, finally, Power Stroke is showing up. So
Well, we're on that topic. I wanted to ask you how involved are those? And I know it's going to vary based on which engine it is and what truck it's going into, but I think sometimes it sounds cool to do a swap, but we don't know either how much labor we're going to pay for, how much time it's going to take, or if I'm taking this on myself, how much work I'm going to have to invest into getting all the components and doing probably some fab work, maybe modifying the firewall, transmission tunnel, things like that. Is it as involved as I think it is?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. It better be a spare vehicle, and you better have, if you're doing it yourself, I would say give yourself a year to make the conversion happen for sure. Not to get back on the IDIs, but I have seen IDIs in 6.4 equipped trucks.
Oh wow.
If you go YouTube 7.3 IDI conversions, there's guys that are putting these things in everything. So it's kind of funny to see in a 6.4 equipped Ford Super Duty, but the guy made it work and he's happy. So I guess more power to you, dude. But yeah, when you talk conversion, it seems like everyone's doing whatever they want with any motor they want these days. So it's kind of interesting to see.
I think that's a point that somebody may come across if they have, an 86 to 93 Ford truck and they get to that decision point where they think, should I invest in this engine, try to find these parts, do these upgrades, or should I just go to something completely different? And I think this conversation helps somebody navigate, what can I expect? What might be some difficulties in sourcing parts or components, or all the whole host of swaps that are out there, and just what to expect. There's a lot to decide.
There is a lot to decide, and I guess overall, if you have patience, you're going to succeed, because definitely need a lot of patience to make those happen. So,
well, we all have that dream of that old truck with kind of a modern diesel engine, or a diesel engine
sure,
that we have affinity for, that
sure.
we want to combine both. But it was really cool to chat with you about these IDIs. Like I said, I've been asked
Hopefully I
over.
helped.
Yeah, you definitely did. And people have asked over the years, like, hey, talk about IDIs, or I just picked one up. And, a lot of the information I find is from the 90s. Do want to, talking about now what's out there. So it's really cool to go through the different components, that we might face. And somebody might have questions for you. Like I said, I don't know anything about them at all. And I love people to be able to connect with the guest and the shops to
Sure.
be able to ask. If somebody's got a question for you, Nate, about an IDI, or maybe they want to know more about one of these swaps, or something else, or maybe the 6 liters we talked about last time, the 7.3s. How
Sure.
can they reach you and connect with you at the shop?
Our shop number is 623-582-4404. We're 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Sales@strictlydiesel.com. You can reach us by email that route. Always happy to talk to people. Make sure you ask for Nate and tell him it's about an IDI, and my people will get it. And at that point, come grab me. But even emails, just put IDI questions or what have you, and I'll get the email, because nobody else wants to touch them. So, but yeah, strictlydiesel.com or strictlydieselrepair.com is our two websites. Either one of those you can find us on too, and email through that. I'm not going to be your IDI part supplier, but again, I can point you in the direction of companies that are doing it still. And again, don't know them, don't necessarily deal with them, but I have options for you. So glad to help whenever I can.
Very cool. It was awesome to chat with you about this. I loved how it came up organically on our last episode, and I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate your time today chatting with us about it. And I'll have to check in with you down the road about your swap, and maybe you can chat with us on the podcast about it, how it all turned out, and what you did
Would
to
love
it.
to. Would love to. Yeah, Dennis thinks I'm a little bit crazy for still loving the IDIs, but it's a thing, so I can't stop it.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code TDP2540. It'll get you 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, handle designs. And their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget that you might have. So if you're in the market, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code TDP2540 for 40% off MSRP. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Tyler Lowe in a 23 Diesel, Cutter Up Rob, Robert, all of other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps. Follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 9 of the Diesel Podcast, and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2025. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.